Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Swallowed Star 2 origin continent based on novel. So let's start. Luo Feng felt his consciousness being drawn to a distant land. Boom tilde tilde tilde. Consciousness roared as an invisible force gathered to form a strong physical body. Luo Feng opened his eyes and looked around. He was in a vast expanse of mountains and forests. This body, Luo Feng felt his body, looking the same as he did in the land of origin, with the same aura. This body is much weaker than my Black River form. It should be a normal godly king level body. Luo Feng wasn't surprised. Before coming here, his master, Emperor Chu, had provided him with all the details about the exploration treasure ground infinite space of the Flame Wind ancient country. The information was also clearly recorded. Everyone who comes to infinite space has the same strength of body. Luo Feng also knew he had been greatly weakened, a normal body without the perfect divine body. He had lost his formless and intangible ability, and he no longer had the ability to create avatars. Luo Feng stood in the mountains and forests, sensing the laws that operated between heaven and earth. The origin Great Tao has also been sealed. Luo Feng thought, according to the exploration of the Flame Wind ancient country, this treasure ground has sealed off as many as 19 origin Great Taos, including the 9 origin Great Taos that govern the supreme rules in the land of origin. 19 Taos are sealed, such as the origin Tao of Thunderbolt, the origin Tao of Flame and so on. Although not among the supreme rules, the land of origin does have such inheritance records. Even both ancient countries have methods to cultivate the origin Tao of Thunderbolt. These 19 origin Great Taos are the 19 with a history of inheritance on the land of origin. All are sealed. Moved by a thought, Luo Feng tried to pry into the mysteries of the Great Tao of Destruction origin, but there was no response from the world around him. Just like the information described, I cannot stir even a wisp of law fluctuations. Luo Feng was shocked by Yuan's method, a treasure field opened by Yuan himself. If he said he had sealed the 19 origin Great Taos, then they were sealed, a strength unimaginably terrifying. Whoosh! Luo Feng quickly flew up, and when he reached a high place above the forest, he looked far into the distance in all directions. With some reference to the terrain, Luo Feng also understood his approximate location. Everyone who comes to infinite space has the same body and cannot use any of the origin Great Tao's mysteries. Luo Feng thought, when we first arrived, we could only rely on our physical body and spiritual will to fight. The main ones who enter this treasure ground are godly kings. Very few from the primal chaos realm could enter, generally only transcendents from the imperial clan of the 2 ancient countries, and there were very few of them. For example, there were only 5 in the Flame Wind ancient country's imperial clan. How many of them could have come in? So this treasure ground of infinite space is mainly for godly kings. There are quite a few existence of lordships. Luo Feng was very cautious. Even if the 2 ancient countries allowed some slots to be given to guest elders, one slot required 50 million merit points, which ordinary guest elder godly kings couldn't afford. Those who could exchange were naturally exceptional. Some second realm of godly king existences, their spiritual will might even be at the ultimate realm of God King. In front of them, Luo Feng still seemed to lack accumulation. Just arrived and can only rely on the physical body and spiritual will. However, as time passes, new paths can be opened up, Luo Feng thought. Aside from the 19 origin Great Taos that are sealed, if a new path that is opened up, it can be used in infinite space. According to the information, infinite space tests 3 things. First, the strength of the spiritual will. Second, opening up new paths. Third, single-handedly killing indigenous creatures in infinite space. Achievements in these 3 areas can all earn reward points, and afterward, those points can be used to exchange for various resources in infinite space, including inheritances, weapon secret treasures, and cultivation aiding treasures. Luo Feng felt that this treasure ground was still quite good. However, to many ancient beings in the land of origin, the hard-earned reward points were ultimately only exchanged for some resources. It was similar to the guest elder system of the 2 ancient countries, accumulating merit points to exchange for resources. The only difference is that the exchange in infinite space has a higher limit. Stronger inheritances, more precious treasures, but the required reward points are also frighteningly high. Earning reward points in infinite space is too difficult. Among the many treasure lands left by Yuan, the allure of infinite space was naturally low. I'm merely a second realm of godly king in terms of spiritual will. Among the competitors in this treasure land, I should be quite average. Luo Feng shook his head slightly. After all, I am just at the primal chaos realm, and it is extremely difficult for my spiritual will to advance further. Although he practiced the Lai Yuan technique and the Great Destruction Heart refining technique, advancement was extremely difficult. Even a bit of negligence could cause the spiritual will to regress instead of progress. Develop a new path. Luo Feng did have an idea. He had long been contemplating developing the great Tao of life and death, but in his plan, he would first solidify his foundation and grasp more of the great Tao of life origin and the great Tao of destruction origin. After that, he planned to try merging them into one, transforming them into the great Tao of life and death. In infinite space, 19 origin great Taos have been sealed, and both the paths of life and destruction have been sealed. I might as well try to completely merge and pave the way for the great Tao of life and death, Luo Feng thought. Search *the Oval Fire.et website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The third item, single-handedly killing indigenous creatures. Luo Feng also found it troublesome. The places in infinite space where local creatures are abundant must have already been taken over by the major forces. Compared to enhancing spiritual will or developing new paths, single-handedly killing indigenous creatures was actually the easiest. Whoosh! Luo Feng left the mountain forest quickly, flying towards the area occupied by the flame-wind ancient country recorded in the information. As the origin Tao of space was also sealed, Luo Feng could only fly slowly. After flying for a long time, Luo Feng unexpectedly came into contact with a vast and lurking spiritual will. This spiritual will had an incredibly wide range of influence, and when it was hidden and restrained, Luo Feng didn't notice it at all. Upon contact, the vast will swept over Luo Feng. Using the Lai Yuan technique to protect his inward spirit, Luo Feng resisted this vast will, which was clearly much stronger than his own. The will of someone at the ultimate realm of God King. Luo Feng made a guess, feeling that the other party was definitely stronger than himself, but not to the point of complete suppression. Is it Luo He from the flame-wind ancient country? The vast will asked as it enveloped Luo Feng. Luo Feng's ordinary physical body couldn't disguise its aura. His aura was completely unobscured, naturally allowing him to be instantly recognized. Who are you? Luo Feng didn't know the identity of the other party. I am the god of fire from the Two Realms Palace, the vast will said. This area is also the territory of our Two Realms Palace, so leave quickly. Luo Feng didn't say much and immediately flew away quickly. This is the territory of the Thunder Ancient Country, leave quickly. This is the domain of Wanfa Tower, depart swiftly. Although Luo Feng had obtained information from his master, the territories within infinite space often changed. A single ancient existence could dominate a vast area. On Luo Feng's journey, he encountered 6 areas occupied solely by the Two Realms Palace, each of which had the presence of a spiritual will at the ultimate realm of God King. These were territories occupied by powerful forces, or exclusively claimed by some formidable ancient existences. Luo Feng flew cautiously. We have arrived. Luo Feng reached a territory documented in the intelligence, which was the closest one owned by the flame-wind ancient country. A vast will enveloped him. Luo Feng's expression changed. The will carried an unfathomably gruesome aura that merely brushed past Luo Feng, but made his spiritual will tremble. During the touch, Luo Feng even thought of the catastrophe beast. Far surpassing me, I've encountered quite a few ancient existences spiritual will since coming to this infinite space treasure land, some of which attained the will of the ultimate realm of God King. But, this is the first will surpassing the level of the ultimate realm of God King. Luo Feng was certain. This crushing strength gave Luo Feng the sense that without the Lai Yuan technique in operation defending him, his spiritual will in infinite space would have been directly obliterated. Luo He, the will noticed Luo Feng. To be a being from the primal chaos realm, and yet make it here. You must have cultivated the calamity beast diagram. Your spiritual will contains quite a bit of the catastrophe beast's essence. Luo Feng replied with due respect, yes. I have cultivated the calamity beast diagram, and it has been a great help to me. I am Emperor Ming, the creator of the calamity beast diagram, the will revealed. Luo Feng was inwardly shocked. Emperor Ming, one of the 13 emperors of the flame-wind ancient country. Emperor Ming also cultivated the primordial bloodline. Generally speaking, he and Luo Feng's master, Emperor Chu, were not from the same faction. The tale of Emperor Ming's rise was a legend in the imperial clan of the flame-wind ancient country. He was an exile in a minor cosmos, born within it, his origins the humblest of all. Yet, he forged ahead, eventually leaving the minor cosmos, becoming a noble of the imperial clan, ascending to godly king, and finally, to emperor. Among the 13 emperors, he had the most humble beginnings, but that garnered the admiration of countless members of the imperial clan. Such a terrifying will. Luo Feng sensed the unfathomable and solemn will of Emperor Ming. Even though he also cultivated the primordial bloodline, Emperor Ming's spiritual will was extremely calm, like an immeasurable sea without a ripple. You are the disciple of Emperor Chu. I can carve out a small piece of territory for you within the land occupied by the flame-wind ancient country. There, you will find 3 native creatures, Emperor Ming offered. If you feel it's too little, you can try your luck elsewhere. Thank you, Your Majesty, I am willing to accept, Luo Feng said respectfully. A token with only a single opportunity to enter. During the initial stage of entering the treasure land, it was natural for him to keep a low profile, lie low, become familiar with infinite space, and gradually increase his strength within it. Go then. The terrifying will transmitted a thread of information to Luo Feng, containing the map to that small piece of territory. Thank you, Your Majesty. Luo Feng immediately flew towards the location of that territory. This Luo He. Emperor Ming was quite proud, generally not fond of the other imperial emperors. However, he harbored a sliver of goodwill towards Luo He. Not of the imperial clan, and yet making it here from the primal chaos realm, is no easy feat. Emperor Ming understood the rarity of the opportunity. Being exiled in a minor cosmos within the imperial clan, at the bottom of the hierarchy, was even harder than being an ordinary resident of the land of origin, with innate strengths much weaker. According to the ancient country's investigation, he comes from the primordial cosmos, born perhaps even humbler than myself. Those born in humility treasure each opportunity all the more, Emperor Ming thought. Even as an emperor, he still valued this treasure land greatly. While some elites of the imperial clan were picky and chose better treasure lands, Emperor Ming, as one of the pinnacle beings of the land of origin, remained here with a shred of consciousness, cultivating in silence. He was determined to fully exploit every opportunity. This was also one of the reasons why he could ascend to emperor. A man in green robes sitting cross-legged on the grass suddenly opened his eyes, and he saw the silhouette of a man in black clothes landing in the distance. Luo He. The man in green recognized the other at a glance. Luo Feng also looked over and smiled, nodding, godly King Tien Mu. This man in green was none other than the godly King Tien Mu from the 13 veins of the imperial clan of the flame-wind ancient country, from the Emperor Ju Feng lineage. I didn't expect to see great Saint Luo He here, said godly King Tien Mu as he stepped forward to greet Luo Feng warmly. As a godly king of the imperial clan of the flame-wind ancient country, he naturally had a sense of pride. But facing great Saint Luo He, godly King Tien Mu was very humble and friendly. After all, everyone knew that in the not-too-distant future, great Saint Luo He could very well be an overlord-level existence in the land of origin. He, godly King Tien Mu, was still only at the first realm of godly king. In terms of strength, he was merely on par with Luo He at the moment. Bear in mind, Luo He was a transcendence of primal chaos realm. How could godly King Tien Mu feel any pride? His Majesty is kind enough to let me hunt here, Luo Feng said. Our flame-wind ancient country has many territories in the infinite space, but the region governed by His Majesty is the safest, godly King Tien said. For His Majesty to allocate a piece of territory to you, it shows how much he values you. Search the ovalfire.et website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Godly King Tien said this outwardly, but was quite surprised inwardly. Everyone knew that Emperor Ming and Emperor Chu did not have a good relationship. Yet, he was willing to help Luo He, which was indeed very rare. By the way, full of curiosity, godly King Tien asked, Great Saint Luo He, how did you get the opportunity to come here? Even for the transcendence of primal chaos realm from our imperial clan, there is only one chance to enter this sacred place. To get more chances, one needs to exchange them for merit points. To get more chances, one must exchange. Luo Feng asked, how many merit points can it be exchanged for? For internal exchanges within the imperial clan, it's 1/10 of the guest elder's quota. Godly King Tien didn't hide the fact since it had long been no secret over the ages. For guest elder godly kings, an entry quota to infinite space costs 50 million merit points. For the imperial clan, it costs 5 million merit points per entry. Even so, for us at the first realm of godly king, it's not easy to accumulate 5 million merit points. Luo Feng understood. For a godly king who is not from the two great imperial clans, to accumulate 50 million merit points, or to wrest resources from the two great ancient countries, they are surely not ordinary godly kings. The opportunity one got to come in was from the Thunder ancient country. Luo Feng did not hide it. Oh? Godly King Tien was surprised. It took quite a bit of effort. Luo Feng did not elaborate. Watching Luo Feng, godly King Tien laughed with admiration. Apart from the two great imperial clans, being able to enter the treasure lands left by the ancestor, at the primal chaos realm stage, is a rarity in the entire history of the land of origin. I can guess that great Saint Luo He seized this opportunity through sheer strength. Compared to great Saint Luo He, we who have been nurtured by our family's resources seem mediocre, said godly King Tien shaking his head. Who dares call a godly king mediocre? I'm still stuck at a bottleneck, Luo Feng said. Ha ha. It's not a bottleneck for you, it won't be long before you become a godly king, godly King Tien said. In his light-hearted talk, he treated Luo Feng as an equal, without the usual sense of condescension that godly kings had towards those at the primal chaos realm. The two chatted leisurely for a while before parting. Luo Feng was quite moved. Internally within the imperial clan, 5 million merit points for an exchange, with some efforts by the godly kings, they could accumulate that amount. But for guest elder godly kings, 50 million merit points, it was much more daunting to accumulate. Especially some ancient existences with sufficient strength, who naturally formed alliances, and began to vie and compete for resources based on strength. The two supreme ancestors had never interfered in these conflicts, perhaps because they were disdainful, or perhaps because those resources were left by the ancestor. The hunting ground Emperor Ming gave me has 3 native creatures. Luo Feng flew towards the nearest native creature based on the intelligence. After flying for more than 10 breaths, Luo Feng saw the creature. Luo Feng observed the native creature. This native creature existed between the real and the illusory, its 8 enormous tentacles permeating the void. In the center of its vast body was an enormous head, with a blood-red solitary eye on it watching Luo Feng intently. Merely observing, there was an invisible spiritual power infiltrating to influence. Luo Feng, with his own spirit at the second realm of godly king and the Yuan technique to guard him, naturally treated it as if it were just a breeze. According to intelligence, every single native creature in infinite space is a creature of the spirit, with spirit as their core and their physical bodies secondary. Luo Feng thought. Their activity range is very limited. This huge tentacled creature also observed Luo Feng, pondering, as my will descends upon this mystical land, this alien strongman will be my 9th ordeal. I must survive 1,000 tribulations to transform. 1,000 trials, without success, there can only be death. This tentacled creature was equally patient. Boom. Luo Feng made his move, and although 19 origin Great Tao in the infinite space was sealed, the most basic law of primal chaos, could still be executed. The tentacled creature also lashed out with its enormous tentacles, each with a terrifying might, each having godly king-level strength, not the least bit inferior to Luo Feng's physical body. However, in terms of skill, this tentacled creature was far from the law of primal chaos, appearing extremely crude. Bang! Like an afterimage, Luo Feng instantly dodged the tentacle's strikes, his foot stabbing like a knife point into the creature's enormous head, blowing a bloody cavity into it. Woo! A low roar sounded, and an even more chaotic spiritual power suddenly erupted, assaulting Luo Feng's spiritual will. This alien strongman, his will is too terrifying. I can't infiltrate a trace. The tentacled creature was somewhat shocked as it had previously gone through tribulations and encountered other godly kings in the infinite space. The strongest one was merely a godly king with spirit at the second realm, who did not possess the law of Yuan technique, and it was still able to contaminate and infiltrate a little. Bang! 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 The body of the tentacled creature exploded time and time again. It was indeed far inferior to Luo Feng in close combat. As its injuries became more severe, tear! Luo Feng also ripped apart an already damaged giant tentacle. Luo Feng, with his overwhelming advantage in close combat, took about the time of a tea ceremony to utterly tear the tentacle creature to shreds, even destroying it bit by bit. However, the immense will of the tentacle creature still loomed there. Buzz! Suddenly, under the manipulation of the ethereal will, invisible forces converged, and in just a few breaths, the forces coalesced into the form of the tentacle creature again. It's recovered. Luo Feng watched this scene, not at all surprised. According to the information, it is impossible to kill the native creatures of infinite space through normal physical combat. Luo Feng thought, even if I destroy its body time after time, it would take hundreds, or even thousands of annihilations before it sustains any injury, and it will vanish for a long time, and after a long while, it will recover and return. Forcing it to disappear will earn me 1 reward point. Because they can't be killed, Emperor Ming allocated only 3 native creatures to Luo Feng's territory. These 3 native creatures, they are enough for Luo Feng to keep killing endlessly. The only way to kill them completely is to annihilate their will. It will then die completely and never recover, Luo Feng thought. According to the information, even the weakest native creature requires the will of the ultimate realm of Godly King to possibly annihilate it completely. I have only the second realm of Godly King's spiritual will, in combination with the Yuan technique. I wonder if I can wipe it out. Luo Feng looked at the tentacle creature in front of him. The tentacle creature also observed Luo Feng. This is my calamity, the 9th one. The tentacle creature, with its long life, naturally had a lot of patience. Suddenly, everything in front of the tentacle creature disappeared. It couldn't see anything else, only a majestic spinning star. The colossal star, rolling forward, directly crushed and impacted the chaotic and frantic spiritual power of the tentacle creature. Splat tilde tilde tilde. The tentacle creature's chaotic and frantic spiritual power was crushed by nearly 80% in an instant. Not good. The tentacle creature also saw Luo Feng, and at this moment, within its giant blood-red eye was shock and anger. It voluntarily disintegrated its body in an instant, and its spiritual conscience completely departed. A distant world. This world, with thousands of countries vying for control, countless creatures struggling to survive, and cultivators among them. The true master of this world are some terrifying beings, and these terrifying beings are known as demons. Demons, immortal and imperishable, feed on the 7 emotions and 6 desires of living beings. Oh, in the depths of the ocean of this world, there was an immensely huge tentacle creature, occupying about a third of the entire ocean, which was also the forbidden sea of this world. This tentacle creature was also the origin of the world's demonic overlords. The most terrifying and dreadful being, it was also the heavenly way of this world. The world's numerous cultivators, they derived their cultivation paths from this being. My 9th calamity turned out to be so terrifying. He actually obliterated nearly 80% of my spiritual power in one strike. The single eye of the tentacle creature also contained a trace of fear. The origin of the demonic overlords of this world, an existence like the heavenly way, actually feeling fear. If the cultivators of this world knew this, they would likely find it unbelievable. However, what he obliterated were the most chaotic and disordered of my thoughts. The tentacle creature also realized this. What remains are even more pure and concentrated. I feed on the 7 emotions and 6 desires of innumerable living beings of this world, which also has made me more chaotic. The ordeal of 1,000 tribulations is both a calamity and a tempering. Once I get through it, I can completely transform. Having been hit once, the tentacle creature also saw the benefits, but it still needed to recuperate. When the time comes, I must descend again, and this calamity is much more difficult and terrible than the previous ones. In the process of undergoing 1,000 tribulations, one can rest temporarily, but cannot shrink back. One must endure each tribulation in turn. After the tentacle creature voluntarily disappeared, it did not show up again. Normally, physical combat would take hundreds to thousands of times to force it to vanish. Just one hit from the Yuan technique, and the tentacle creature took off. It's a pity. I couldn't kill it completely. Luo Feng shook his head slightly. My spiritual will is still not strong enough. Even the will of the ultimate realm of Godly King, using some powerful secret techniques of willpower, is only hopeful of annihilating it completely. If my spiritual will were a few percentage points stronger, perhaps I could have destroyed it in one strike. These chaotic thoughts. Luo Feng frowned slightly as he realized that while destroying nearly 80% of the creature's spiritual power, a large number of chaotic thoughts contaminated his own spiritual will, with the various emotions and desires of countless creatures tainting his own being. This was also the aftermath of using spiritual will against such native creatures. Suddenly, boom tilde tilde. Invisible laws descended and enveloped Luo Feng. Trialist, Luo he from land of origin. For repelling a spiritual being once, reward points. 1. All resources in the treasure trove can be exchanged with reward points. Fighting with the basic law of primal chaos, new Dao evaluation, low. Reward points, 0. You have not carved out any new Dao, more effort is needed. Your body of primal chaos realm reaching the will of the second realm of Godly King, spiritual will evaluation, medium. Reward points, 100. Your spiritual will is barely passable, improvement is needed. Total reward points, 101. This video will end here.